Hello, everyone, and welcome to India Foundation for the Arts' project showcase that we do online. As some of you know, from the time that the pandemic hit us, we have been sharing the work that our grantees do on these online forums. For some of you who may not know what IFA is, we are a not-for-profit organization set up in Bangalore, and we support arts and culture projects across the country. We also implement arts and culture projects. Over the last 25 years, we have supported and implemented more than about 700 projects. And the outcomes of these are out there in the public world as books, films, exhibitions, archival material, websites, all of that. But other than supporting and implementing projects, we find it very important and necessary to share the outcomes, the processes, the conversations that happen among artists and scholars around these projects, and give it a wider platform, share it with our multiple publics and audiences. Now, before the pandemic, it used to be a lot of fun where we would go to different cities and towns, have collaborative partners on the ground, and have our artists travel with us, share their work, share the conversations that they're having. But post the pandemic, we had to find a way to do this, continue to do this. And the showcase format on Zoom is one way in which we said we will take this forward. So you're watching this on the Zoom webinar format, but this is also live on the India Foundation for the Arts social media Facebook page. So if you would like to invite your friends to take a look at that, you can do that. Of course, you can also share it onto your own page, make it a watch party and all of that, so that today's presentation, today's discussion is accessible to many, many more people. Today, we have a very special project that we want to showcase, and it's special for many reasons. It is going to be in collaboration with One Shanti Road. And with a few house rules I'll mention now, and then I'll forward this to my colleagues to take it on. So the quick house rules are that, as you know, the webinar format has a little space called chat, where you can share your comments, your sort of feedback about what you're listening to. But we are going to take question and answers at the end of today's session. And today there'll be multiple artists, so all kinds of questions can come in. Those I would request you to put in the Q&A box, and it is easier for us to manage it from there. Now, if you or your friends are watching us on Facebook, you can put your questions as comments below the Facebook live video, and somebody from IFA is going to ensure that those questions reach us. So those are the quick house rules for us. I will now pass this over to my colleague, John, to tell you a little more about why this evening is so special. John.
Thank you, Arundhati. Am I audible?
Yes, John, you are.
Okay. Thank you, Arundhati. So before I introduce Suresh Jayaram and One Shanti Road, I would like to briefly talk about the program at IFA called Project 560, which is about supporting artistic activities based on Bangalore. And its name is taken from the Bangalore pin code, the first 3 digits of the pin code 560. There are 3 categories in Project 560. Firstly, neighborhood engagement, which is about small artistic projects to rethink about our neighborhoods in Bangalore. Then there is a category called arts projects, research and practice, which is for artists and scholars who want to artistically engage with Bangalore and its history or its future or its present through any form of art. And finally, curated artistic engagements, which is about creating artistic experiences around the city throughout the year, including collaborations of various artistic energies in the city of Bangalore. So what we are going to hear about today from Suresh Jayaram and our artist friends here, it was supported under curated artistic engagement under Project 560, and it is called Bangalore Connect, which was jointly supported by IFA and Goethe Institute. And it has been led by Suresh Jayaram and One Shanti Road. Suresh Jayaram is a Bangalore-based artist, art historian, and curator, and he was a principal of Chitrakala Parishad, and he is also founder director of One Shanti Road. As everyone knows how important One Shanti Road has been for the artistic energies in Bangalore. And so this is a very special evening for Project 560 and for IFA, And on that, I hand it over to Suresh Jayaram to take it forward. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, John. Thank you, Arundhati. I just want to tell you about our project, which is called Bangalore Connect. And my partners have been Archana, Bharathesh, Ashok, and Sandeep. I also want to inform you that Bangalore Connect was curated artistic engagements, which relooked at the city and its cultural landmarks. We also looked at the famous citizens and everything that is connected with Bangalore, like its objects from the granite that you see everywhere, and possibly the monkey tops, the botanical inspirations, the parks and the gardens, and even something as common as the Baitu filter coffee. We went all around the city physically and also looked at personal archives from people and from institutions to come about with this project, which interrogated this city in many ways. I also want to tell you that these projects had a multi-forked approach. First, they tried to look, research, and investigate many things that we see in the city, which is common to us, but also we try to look at how we could subvert these ideas and make it part of our artistic practice. I just want to also inform you that IFA is our principal sponsor, and we had Goethe Institute pitching in and supporting us to continue to do the work we are doing during the pandemic. It was a strange experience to be working during the pandemic. And as you all know, that Shanti Road is a physical space. We often have people coming over, dropping in for meals, having conversation about the city, about art and culture. But during the pandemic, it was just us. And it meant that we had to work on the project 560, and it gave us a lot of time and energy to investigate things that we really wanted to do. The roads were empty and we were out there photographing, meeting people, and also trying to investigate what we can put into this kind of a quilt-like curatorial project, which had many colors, many forms, many ways of looking at the city, and to come up with this project, which still continues in our minds. I want to go to the first project that first project was representing Bangalore's landscape. It featured about 30 artists, and we also had a writing workshop as part of it. It was a homage to one of the most important painters who painted nature in the urban landscape. He was Rumale Channabaswaya. And we also need to acknowledge Karnataka Chitra Kala Parishad, which was a venue sponsor, and it was held during Chitra Sante, which is one of the most significant art events in the city. And this was the result of just want to show you Rumale's work, and obviously you can recognize the gulmohars in the landscape. This is a pre-pandemic show, so you have everybody there without masks, and you could see a large crowd in the spacious exhibition galleries of CKP. What was fascinating about this exhibition was it had a lot of amateur and professional artists who came together for the first time. Badal Majumdar, who works in VIT, and Runjun Kejriwal, who was an ex-student of CKP, each one looking at the city in their own perspective and their own material. Here you have Nupur Kunwar and Spurti Murali, who were looking at the city with watercolors and oil paintings. I'm going to the next project, which is called Written on the City, and I would welcome Amitabh to speak about this particular project because he was part of the mentor who kind of brought together all these very, very important artists who really work with comics. Amitabh, over to you.
Thank you, Suresh, and thank you, IFA, for having me this evening. It's really nice because one of the first serious comics I read was an IFA-funded project, and that was, I think, a good 15 years ago, Corridors. So to talk about a comic book project on an evening such as this, it's a matter of deep honor. So let's just jump right to it. I'll give you a little bit of context about this. So pre-pandemic, it was a really flourishing time for comic book artists such as myself and other people who independently produce, because a lot of the revenue generation or comic book making happened for these not-for-profit, non-funded, uh, uh, sort of cooperatively run independent comic book events. These were flea markets that had happened, and that sort of led to a spurt of comic book making. And 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 when the pandemic happened, it was like something just pricked the bubble. And I mean, I have 800 unpublished comics. I mean, I have 800 printed comics lying in my house, and I don't know what to do with them. At a time like this, where morale was low, uh, Suresh got in touch, and he was very keen to sort of run a comic book making project, which was focused on Bangalore. And I think me and others like myself found it as a rallying point to really gain certain amount of flux about around comic making in the city, and sort of to put some fuel on a slowing vehicle. So we got together a motley crew of mentors, Suresh, of course, myself, the incredible Anil Kumar, who should, I think, start an institution called the Anil Kumar Institution of Art, an institution on his own. Bharat Murthy is an animator, filmmaker, cartoonist, comic book artist, and also the part of the core team that started the Indie Comics Festival series. Again, an IFA grant. There was Pagal Canvas, and Pagal Canvas is I'm sorry, I live next to a railway station, so but I'll keep on going. Pagal Canvas is a city-based art duo who make really, really fantastic stuff, and they were also part of the scene. And Anpu Arki, who, like myself, paints in public spaces and makes comics and is a celebrated artist. And what we did was we chose to take the brave route of the open call. But as is with most open calls, you don't really know what you're getting. But what we got was a rich and eclectic mix of people who had been making comics, people who were interested in making comics, and people who wanted to use this. And this really goes to show, how One Shanti Road plays a pivotal role, because the call from One Shanti Road really gets uh, a very eclectic group of the artist community involved. So we had sculptors, two sculptors, both of them making their first comics, and both middle-aged artists, Siddharth Karadwal and Rugen Rathod. But can you move to the next slide? Yeah, so this was Siddharth's comic. He sort of he mixed performance and storytelling in trying to, I mean, and he drew on a blackboard and erased and drew and erased, and he documented the entire process to make this crazy 60-pager where we have allusions to historical characters in Bangalore, and them colliding within a certain contemporary chaos of sorts. So we had Trippy Sultan, Campa Cola, all in the same frame and all in deep philosophical dialogue about the nature of the city. Can we move to the next one? This was Rasna's. It's a beautiful comic, and I hope that there is some way that the archive in One Shanti Road can, open itself, because you really need to read this comic. It was made by Rasna, and it was about a car ride in Bangalore. I'm not doing it justice really, but so you have to read it to really understand the value. Can we move to the next one, please? What was also interesting, that a lot of people who applied had been One Shanti Road residents, and there you see Mr. Jayaram himself, along with Shamli. Shamli had been resident in One Shanti Road and part of its rich and diverse artist community. And she had a very interesting journey as an artist, because I think she made This was her first attempt at sequential narrative, and like many others, I think Siddharth also made his first comic, as did the next one. Can you move to the next slide, please? Murugen Rathod. So basically, the format was such that each mentor got 3 artists under them, and Murugen not only is a very dear friend and someone I've known for the longest time. We were in college together, but he was also making his first comic, and it was an incredible experience for me. I'm not sure how it was for Murugen, but for me to really deconstruct what the comics form meant uh, in lieu of being in conversation, who's making it for the first time. Because although the questions were fundamental, uh, but they were generative in a way that Murugen, and this is part of his still under process comic, but we took a pause and we said, okay, these are the pages that's going to happen. I just want to add one note, and I know Chanakya is here in the audience, so he'll understand this. We are working together on a similar venture where the access to place was absent, and the nature of the project was around place. And I mean, for some of us who worked in public spaces, this idea of placemaking is very strong. And I felt that with the project that we are working, that Chanakya and some of us are working right now, and with this project as well, there was a reverse engineering of the idea of placemaking, where uh, you're not placing the image in place, but you are putting the place in the image. And I feel that it's an experiment worth doing again and exploring. So once again, thank you, IFA and Suresh, for having me here. Over to you, Suresh.
Thank you. I go to the next project, and everybody asks us, why are we mapping only Cubbon Park and Lal Bagh? As you all know, that Shanti Road is in the center of the city, and we are fortunately sandwiched between these two amazing parks that are not only historical, but also part of our everyday reality. So my partner in crime was Biju, and she incidentally was my senior in college, and she always introduces me like that. And it was fascinating to work with her because she's a major cyclist and she knows every part of Bangalore, which even I don't know. And which used to come down from Coxtown to my place, and we used to start exploring Cubbon Park. And this is the map that you see. It is almost like a miniature painting. And I had a tough time to hold Biju back because she was adding detail after detail into this fascinating map. And we printed it and obviously figured out how we could share it with the public. And then we roped in somebody very important to us and a fellow walker in Cubbon Park, Priya Chetty, somebody who was part of the I Love Cubbon Park group. And Priya was giving us a lot of advice of how we could involve many people in the walks and how we could make Cubbon Park a place to walk, explore not only the historical heritage of Bangalore, but also the monuments and the buildings that are part of this amazing park, which is uh, almost called using the word lung of the city. We move from Cubbon Park to Lal Bagh, which is again a stone throw away from Shanti Road, and it happens to be my favorite park. Always either shuttling between Cubbon Park and Lal Bagh. So here is a walk that was organized, and it was in the heart of this pandemic situation, and many people turned up. And my dear friend Mohan, who's a fellow walker and collaborator, invited many of his friends to participate in this walk, and we happily distributed the maps to people, and we engaged with a lot of young and older people who looked at these parks in a different perspective. Many of them said that we were able to locate the garden in the context of his historical and botanical perspective and see how the history of Bangalore is kind of embedded in the history of Lal Bagh and Cubbon Park. I want to invite my dear friends Ashok and Sandeep, who are part of Bangalore Inside Out project. And here you go.
Okay, hello everybody. Sorry, we have to do a little adjustment because the three of us are together here. So I'm Ashok.
I'm Sandeep.
And we were tasked with the photography project. And the project was called Bangalore Inside Out. And the germination of the project really originated from wanting to look at the personal, the intimate. And we thought, what better way than the art form of photography, you know, looking at the role of photography as a means of access to people and places that we otherwise may not have access to. And so we wanted to sort of look at artists, photographers, and their works who had done works around really sort of personal stories that showcased the photographer's journeys and the subject's journeys in looking at sort of the intimate familial histories, you know, and, you know, relationships, personal relationships, interior spaces, but all that sort of connected to the city and Bangalore. So we wanted to sort of shift that gaze inwards and indirectly talk about the city that way. So conceptually, that's what we decided on. And the project was called Bangalore Inside Out, which then brings me to the thought process around wanting to showcase the exhibition. We didn't want to do typical prints like most photography shows. We wanted to do all projections. And the initial idea was to do a show out in the public, so have public projections of the work. But then COVID hit, so we weren't able to do that, but we did a hybrid version of that where parts of the work were projected outside on a billboard, outside the gallery of One Shanti Road, and then other works all across the space of One Shanti Road. You know, so that way, you know, the shift that we sort of looked at being inwards within the works, we wanted to show that publicly. You know, have that outward gaze for people to sort of experience. So okay, so now I'll talk about, we'll just go through the different artists that we selected and showcased in the project. These are just sort of the images of the exhibition. So I'll just run through those, and then Sandeep and I will talk about each of the artists that we selected and showcased. This Raghav Shreyas's work was in the living room space of Shanti Road on a TV. And so this is the billboard that I was talking about, which is right outside of One Shanti Road. Two of the artist's works were projected here, which is really amazing because, you know, all the people that were walking around, driving around were able to see it. And all these sort of photographs were edited in sort of a moving image video format. So we wanted to play around with that as well. So out here were Nora and Mr. Reicher's work. Another image of the outdoor projection. And this was a projection of the work by Paul Hutchinson, which was in the Badam courtyard. So those who've been to One Shanti Road will be very familiar with all these spaces. And along with along with Paul's work, I thought it was interesting to sort of curate music by my dear friend Go Katayama. He's Japanese actually, and so he DJs and puts together playlists of electro funk and soul and disco, and it just really went really well with his works. And then, you know, we'll talk about those works later. Okay, so here we'll just briefly go over all the artists' works. The first one is by Mr. Reicher. His project is called Sandalwood Hysteria, which is basically, you know, he documented sort of the hysteria around, you know, the sandalwood industry and the films, but mainly about how they have fanatic fans iconizing and idolizing a lot of film stars in Karnataka. So that's Samir's work, and this was projected outdoor in public.
So the another work is by Raghav Shreyas. So talking about Raghav Shreyas work, when I first came to Bangalore like 8 years back, as all the Malayalis, I was walking around this Brigade Road, and when we came near the Koshis, my friend told me, this is the iconic restaurant where all the people, all the intellectuals in the city goes. So I used to stand outside Koshis and think about who are all the people inside. I always used to think about the people inside. So this work is all about that. All the people who visited Koshis and have coffee and do their work. So these are all black and white portraits of the people who've been to Koshis by Raghav Shreyas. I think Raghav Shreyas is also an IFA awardee. So he did research on education in Karnataka in 1999. And unfortunately, he's no more. So his work is all about that. The people inside Koshis, and it's an archive of all these portraits. So there is Ramchandra Guha, Pushpamala, all those people. And the another photographer I want to talk about is Nora Bible. And when we started looking for artists for this exhibition, the two photographers immediately came in my mind or came in our mind was Nora Bible and Paul Hutchinson, because they were the residents of Shanti Road. I think Paul was here on 2016 and Nora came here much before that, 2013. And Nora did a project. She went all around Shantinagar and documented this joint families, which is very different from Germany, like coming to Bangalore and seeing all this families. So she went with Mona and Suresh and take all these portraits. So this is also a sort of looking into the interior space of the houses, the living room, all the photographs taken in the living room. Yeah. So you can maybe add.
Paul,
yeah, so Paul Hutchinson's work is, he documented this underground culture. It's called B-Boys and the horticulture. So he documented the hip hop culture in Bangalore. And he has a very different, I mean, his own way of aesthetic looking at this. We'll see more photographs in next slides.
I don't think we have more photographs of his, but yeah, the breakdancer culture in Bangalore. And so it was with his work, Paul's work, that the music was sort of curated with that I talked about previously. So these are 4 artists that we showcased. The other 4 artists, or 2 right now, is Abhishek Dasgupta. Abhishek Dasgupta's work was very interesting, very abstract. He sort of looked at the Garadi Mane's kadas and wanted to sort of talk about how it was a sort of dying old form of working out and wrestling. And how sort of it was losing its glory to the modern gym, basically. But to him, in his work, it wasn't really about the Garadi Manes. He was looking at these wrestlers in a very experimental way to kind of see them as subjects in the space and revealing an interplay of the anatomical and the spiritual forces at play. So that was his work. And the other photographer's work is Niranjan Hostmoney. His project was called Winston Churchill, Rose Hamilton, and Mr. White. Basically, he looked at a lot of the colonial era built Anglo-Indian houses that within the village of Whitefield, which is now basically filled with IT infrastructure buildings. And so he wanted to document the few remaining Anglo-Indian houses of Bangalore and kind of look at the English aesthetic and lifestyle and kind of like showcase these fragile memories of that era and these houses and the aesthetics.
Actually, also we have to talk about the experience of curating this project. That was the most interesting part, because we had this grand idea of having projections in different part of city, like City Market. So we were imagining we'll show the photograph in one of the building in City Market, so people from the bridge can also see it in the evening. And so we never knew about how hard that is going to be to get the permission. So thanks to Ashok, Ashok was very persistent on showing it outside. So we found this place outside the building. And so we eventually, I mean, we've been going to the police station and like every day to get the permission. And so that was really an interesting experience for me and Ashok, going all this government office and getting the permission. And we need to submit all the photographs, and we need to take out some of the photographs to show it in the public space. Maybe you can.
And in a way, working with the community, the Shanti Nagar community, because we had to work with these local men that basically administer that billboard, which is always, there's always this flex print of Rajkumar, basically. They have huge, pride in the, in the local culture. So working with them was really interesting, basically convincing them to sort of allow us to do this exhibition and showcasing these works. And what really worked was that we were showcasing something about Bangalore and its culture, and it also dealt with, the film industry of Bangalore and the state. So I think that was like a huge sell to kind of convince them to help us.
Yeah, and it was also kind of a collaboration with the people around Shanti Road, because also we are showing the photographs of Nora Bible, which is the joint family photographs. So all the members who were part of the photograph who came to see the work, and there was a big crowd outside of Shanti Road. That was really nice to see, like all the community, all the people around Shantinagar joining the exhibition. And
we interjected there. So we have two more artists that we'll quickly run through. The other one is Sriti Chamaria. Her project was called How to Sit for the Camera. Basically, she documented a lot of these old photo studios in Bangalore and Mumbai, but we mainly showcased her photographs from Bangalore. What was it? Basically, these photo studios that were once in the past very popular and frequented by all kinds of people now seem to be a thing of the past. And so I think her interest was in to sort of look at people's fantasies in a way, in how they wanted to view themselves and how they wanted to view themselves in photographs. And kind of like giving us a fascinating glimpse into sort of these individual fantasies and popular tastes. And thereby highlighting all the different changes that Bangalore has encountered, socially, economically, and culturally. So that was Shruti's work. And then the last artist that we showcased was K. Venkatesh. He's a well-known press photographer, and his project was called Banyan Clan. And he basically documented this very interesting 180 member joint family who live actually close to Dharwad, not really Bangalore. But basically the idea of including his work was to sort of, showcase that there are families who live in joint families still to this day, and to sort of show that contrast to their counterparts in sort of urban living like us, where it's either, a smaller joint family, maybe 2-member, 3-member family units, or people living alone. And because he's a Bangalore-based photographer, we thought we'd include that work. So basically in total, 8 artists under this project. So I think
we were looking for more women photographers, but
yeah, so we'll move on.
Back again, and going to take you to this exhibition that we put together, which was curated by myself and a very young colleague who's a budding art historian, Sagar Shastri. It was a great experience curating this, because for Sagar Shastri, it was a learning experience of curating a very, very large show, which included a lot of artists who were part of the Bangalore art scene, young and old. And you will see how the show looked like. These two women are the most amazing people I've met. Hussein B sisters. Both of them are called Hussein B. They belong to the Siddhi community, and they were part of this large community that made these fascinating quilts. They are part of the legacy of the Africans who came to India and settled down, and they're part of this large network of people who have a very distinctive look, and you can identify them easily. But they have this tremendous skill of putting fabric together. And we invited Hussein B sisters to be part of the project. Anitha Reddy, who was working with me in this project, which is her own project, was part of this show. And Hussein B sisters came and did this fantastic workshop. And this workshop was very, very successful because it had about 20 artists, young men and women, learning how to quilt from the Siddhi sisters. That's what I want to call them now. And you could see that there is a diversity of people working with the quilts, from Hina Pari, who's an art graduate, to another lady who's from Rajasthan, working in an NGO, who came to learn a new skill of quilting from Hussein B. Mention of a very interesting quilt by Renuka Rajiv, a local artist who works exclusively with textiles, and she has a unique skill of trying to bring in a lot of um, contemporary issues like the COVID situation into her work, and has the ability to create something extremely abstract, like the work to our right, and something figurative and representational to the left, which has a lot of text. So it has images, text, etc. And Renuka was also part of the workshop held by the Siddhi sisters, and participated in learning new skills from them. I don't know if Anita is there in the audience. I would like to call her if she's around, but I think Archana is ready to speak to us. Anita, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say about the workshop actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Jayaram. Yeah, it was a good experience to have that workshop in the Urban Fabric Show. Actually, this project was all about to encourage the participants to develop the original solutions. Like, I mean, use this as their medium for new medium for their work actually. So this was not a technical and prescriptive course actually. Like Renuka, like she learned the technique and then now she's using it as a to express herself. So in that sense, like, I mean, a lot of people came up with their own ideas when they participated in this workshop, like, I mean, so it was also very interesting to see that how the cities were also, they also enjoyed quite a bit coming to Bangalore and then getting I remember Hussein be saying, forever we have been teaching our girls and today we got a chance to teach someone else. So it really feels nice to be part of the show, is what I heard. Like, yeah, I just wanted to say this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. We have jump-started the next project, which is a postcard project. Welcome Archana, who is my classmate from Baroda. And we studied together, and now we are working together in a project without fighting with each other. And so you will tell us about the postcard project, which is a huge project and is still continuing. And over to you, Archana.
Thank you, Suresh. Before I jump to the postcard, I just want to tell you about the process of this thing which we are calling Bangalore, the Great Plague of 1898 to 2020. It has a huge history, especially with Suresh. Is like at least 10 or 15 years back, we, Suresh, Shantamani, Lalita, we all had almost started documenting the city on our own, and which now we find it that most of the places are not there, not existing. It has developed into something else. But then again, we refreshed this project and Suresh invited me, and with me, Bharathesh also got involved, and Bharathesh and me both together, we curated one project which has two parts. One is the postcard and one is called the cuisine. It's about the film, which later Bharathesh will talk about. Uh, for focusing on this postcard project, it is a city timeline through the eyes of artists, filmmakers, researchers, uh, local archivists, library. It is through the city people. Actually, we are developing this project. And in Bangalore, especially what I'm seeing is most of the artists, practitioner artists, or filmmakers, architects, all of them have invested on the city largely, like it's huge, and they have lots of personal archives. They have their own archive, and many have their parents' archive also, which becomes very important at this point when we look at it. And those became an important source for us to study during this pandemic time, as we have been from the beginning telling pandemic, and COVID, because this whole project started, ended, we don't even know, almost online, but still we thought of the great plague of 1898 to 2020 before the pandemic started, when we applied. But we didn't know we will jump from one pandemic to the another pandemic. And why the great plague is because that is where Bangalore structure started, the urbanization we started looking at, and we see a change of what developed 220 years, what we see now. Most of it, we had decided to do a show, which unfortunately we couldn't, because we are involving at least 40 artists and 20 students, and we have done some workshops with the students, but it's at least 50, 60 artists, and it is every day growing, somebody or another appearing with interesting data, and we are involving them. So we don't know when it is going to end, and I hope before the pandemic ends, we end our project somewhere or another. But in a very interesting way, why postcard was also one question mark. In our curatorial thought, which basically with me, Suresh, and Bharathesh discussing so much on this timeline, always this whole Bangalore idea of Bangalore outside is a very beautiful city and is a paradise and a pensioner city, and but also in a way the IT industry and all those kind of white collar to there is a lot of shift for 120 years, but still people talk about the weather and where do you want to settle, it's Bangalore. This whole idea we thought was very romantic also in the beginning, but there is so many layers of the city which people uh, need to dig in, and which the artists have already done. And so we wanted to see the timeline through the practitioners. So we started with this blog now, because we wanted to do a huge show in the post office, general post office, which we are still waiting. And I hope that by the end of this year or next year, we will do a show, not to take a risk at this point, of the two parts of the postcard and films together. It's a little ambitious, so we don't know how long it would take to collect data. And so huge archive has been collected, and a lot of research, a lot of students have got involved at this point. lot of younger artists have got involved, and they come out with a lot of good insight. But most interestingly is a lot of senior artists have put in work in this project, and they have been trusting us and giving material, opening their archive. Initially, it was all online, and whenever there is a lockdown and it opens up, we go to see their personal archives and collect it. So it's a long procedure, but we've been very patient because there is no other way to do this kind of timeline. And it's very interesting to collect data and imagination. So this the concept of this particular project is, if we are sharing our data with artists and designers and architects, and then they are revisiting the history of Bangalore, which connects to the world. So it is like, now for us, the Bangalore becomes a center and it is connecting to the world. And we are narrating stories through their practice, through their images, through their imagination. So it's also, you go into the history and reimagine why this didn't happen, and why it's more of a questioning of the timeline, and also debating the claims of the city, debating the rumors, debating the gossips, and also stories which are all mostly oral. And it can be true, false, but somewhere that research is happening. It looks like a oral history story along with lot of newspaper cuttings, people's personal experiences, and the existing archive of personal images. So it's very exhausting at this point. We every week upload our blog. Please visit our blog whenever you can. And we started with the story of Plague Amma, and we thought of ending it as Are You Bangalore? But now I don't know, when COVID Amma has come, so what we are going to end up with. But definitely it would be like a question of being Bangalore. So I leave you here, and I hope I get feedbacks for the blog. And everybody is still, it's an open project, and we are welcoming each and everyone to be part of it anytime. Thank you, Suresh.
Thank you, Archana. And I've already moved to the next project. And this is called Namma Uru Namma Jana. It had other younger people, Aishwaryan Kumaran, Kalakantan, Saga Shastri, and again Sandeep TK, working on these interviews, narratives of people who have experienced the city from their context, about the city's history, about the locality, about what are the smells that they often encounter when they move in the city, and also things about some very local stories about the small eatery, or possibly what is the future of Bangalore. And another important question we ask these people is, how do they navigate in this city? And this was most fascinating, but because we moved in all different directions, north, south, and east, west of the city, and we tried and brought in many voices that were almost kind of very fresh. I'll take you to another slide. Two contrasting areas. One is from Koshi's, everybody knows it. Interviewing Prem Koshi was a delight. And the other one was the two sisters, Kamlakshi and Indarakshi, who are really historians and people who kind of retain the tradition of Malleshwaram. They have every history of every lane, every person, every temple, or every other social space that has become part of the Malleshwaram cultural geography. I'll first go to Prem, and Prem talked about how when the sliced bread, which was first made in the Koshi's bakery, landed up in Bangalore, and they obviously take the credit for it. It created a new way of looking at bread because it's something that was ready-made and something you could eat with your curry or sambar or just make a sandwich, etc. And also the iconic story about how the restaurant became part of his city's contemporary present and historical past. When it came to Kamlakshi and Indrakshi, it was so fascinating to listen to them about every family that was unique from different parts of Malleshwaram and how they contributed to the history of Malleshwaram in the unique way. It could be the Sirurs in Malleshwaram. Kamlakshi and Indrakshi also narrated a story about the freedom struggle, the Maharaja coming to the Malleshwaram main road to greet and meet people. And the narratives were going on in many ways, and these kind of 30 narratives incorporated a lot of personal stories that are part of an archive, and is going to be a continuing project. I invite my friend and Bharathesh to be part of this session. Hi, Bhartesh. One is, it was called Cuisine. Earlier it was called Uttada Kathegalu, then it became Cuisine, but it's all about the fascinating food stories about Bangalore. Initially, we thought we were going to record food stories about the city, about the uniqueness of certain food, whether it is the dum road that is so typical of Bangalore, or the Akhada biryani in Shivaji Nagar, or possibly the dosa in Malleshwaram. But we tried to move beyond it. And Bhartesh will tell us how he invited Fala Faisal, Umesh Madanali, and Mansoore to be part of this amazing project, which is films about something that is unique about food narrative of the city. Over to you, Bhartesh.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, IFA. Am I audible? Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Been doing online classes, so it's like a used to it now. Okay. Thank you, guys. The cuisine was idea started as a just will me, Suresh, and Archana. We thought in the beginning that we'll invite around 5 to 6 artists or filmmakers, and we'll kind of ask them to do a 5 minutes, 10-minute film on a food and city, focusing on a Bangalore as a food culture and all this thing. Later, more we started digging into the idea. More we started because the postcard project and cinema both are almost the food and film project. Both are like going together. So that's why we brought in this timeline of a pandemic to pandemic timeline, which we are using, which are kind of following in a postcard. We also brought in a film project. So initially we thought we'll do just a kind of a documentary kind of a thing. Later we thought it's a docu-fiction. Then finally me and Archana sat and decided it's going to be only a fictional film. So we wanted our filmmakers and artists to invest their time and come up with a new idea in terms of fiction, keeping a city and a food, not only a food, as a recipe, looking at a city itself as a recipe, city itself as a flavor, city itself as a code of a conduct in terms of a smell, taste. It's also fiction. When you fictionize an idea, when you fictionize a city.
Sorry, Bhartesh, little louder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No. When you look at through a lens of a fiction, suddenly the city and the idea of a recipe will start extending its wings. So that's what we wanted. So in the process of we are looking at a lot of filmmakers, we're looking at a lot of artists who collaborated with this. Then finally we kind of ended up with 3 filmmakers. One is Fala. Fala is a comic book writer and filmmaker. He's been producing comic books, like a very political satire. He writes his own sketches, he shorts them, he edits them, and he has a very distinct sense of a humor in his videos. So that's the reason we selected Fala for this project. And he, when we first sat with him and we were discussing with him, then he come up with this his own story. His aunt makes a really good chicken lasagna, which we haven't tasted yet because of the pandemic season. So he narrated this very interesting story that his aunt makes a very good lasagna, and there is a story around it in the 90s when Sachin was playing in Bangalore. His aunt and his dad went to a Chinnaswamy Stadium and offered him a chicken lasagna. He tasted the chicken lasagna and he scored 172 runs that day. And Fala and the family takes a lot of pride in it. But they lost the match. So he kind of fictionized that idea and he shot this in Shanti Road. It's very satirical, it's very interesting visual vocabulary that he brings in. The sense of a narrative is very interesting for us work. Maybe that is the reason we brought him in the project, because we wanted that sensorial quality in an image and a motion language. Then we have Umesh. Well, Umesh has always been in lists. The second we started thinking about the curation, Umesh has always been a part of it, because Umesh is being a visual artist, being a filmmaker, actor, all this thing is one of the best cook chef we have in city. So he's of course he's the first choice. So being a Umesh, what he did in his film, he kind of looks into a reflection of a society and political kind of narratives in his very abstract expression video. I think most of us have seen a video. If it's not, it's in a YouTube Shanti Road YouTube channel. Please have a look at it. He brings in this idea of a recipe. When you ask them for a talk about the city and a recipe, city and a food, he brings in the idea of he started looking at entire city as a recipe itself, as a menu itself. He brings in all the political, economical, social changes, what happened, what is happening, how it's happening, in terms of in the lens of a human behavior. That is a very interesting touch that Umesh brought in his video. And it's very abstract expression, but still very it was very sensorial. I kind of felt it very. It's good. It's nice. Being a.
I think Bharathesh, we're running out of time.
Yeah. Okay. Then we have a Mansoor, which Mansoor is a filmmaker, is a Kannada feature filmmaker.
There's a lot more to see, but I'm sure you can.
I'll just take 2 minutes. I'll finish. So Mansoor, the film is not finished yet. He's been working, and his entire team was fall sick because of the COVID, so he couldn't finish on time. So basically, he's talking about the food politics in an urban culture, in an urban society. So he talks about let's say there's a board in a city that to let for veg only. So he takes that idea and he kind of conceived a story around it. So these are the 3 films. Two films are out, and one will be out in maybe 2-3 days. Then we'll have maybe one more conversation around it, maybe when we have a physical show. And me and Archana are also planning to do a one video, which we are already working on, which has already been there in our mind. We didn't get time, and there was no budget. So I think hopefully for the show we'll have our videos too. So yeah, thank you, Suresh.
Thank you, Bharathesh. Back to John. Do we have questions, comments?
Yeah. Suresh, if you stop sharing, we can all come back
Okay.
in the gallery mode.
Sure.
Yeah.
So thank you, Suresh, for leading the team for such a wonderful discussion of various kinds of artistic experiences based on Bangalore. And for someone like me who came to Bangalore very recently, this project has been very central for me to understand and experience Bangalore and I consider myself very lucky to be able to understand the project so deeply. My question is regarding the time period that we are in. So the last 1 year has been quite unique in the institutional history of Vanshanti Road as well, because of the lockdowns. So would you like to share uh, about this time period as an artist and curator? uh, how uh, how did you deal with it, and what does the project mean to you in that context?
Thank you. I think the IFA project was like a shot in the arm during the pandemic. It was an opportunity for us to look back into our own archive, which Archana and Bharathesh were talking about. We had already had a lot of material, and it was a time to relook into the archive and also focus purely on investigating the city's history, the past, and also in the context of the many things that we were trying to look at through the eyes of filmmakers, map makers, artists, comic makers, people who are making food, chefs, etc. And so it was also a period where there was no residency program or there was no art events, but it was purely focused on the activities of the Bangalore Connect. So we really invested a lot of quality time. It was a fantastic opportunity for us. It was a time where we also really kind of met each other. We literally stayed in each other's homes, in Archana's homes, Bharatesh's studio, and we really got together in a way that we've never done this before. So it was making best use of the pandemic situation to get back to our own work of archiving the city, but also bringing out some kind of output involving others, whether it's a senior most artist like Pushpamala, or it could be a young student from Srishti or Chitrakala Parishad. We were trying to put things together. I think the best metaphor I could use is we were literally quilting the city into this very colorful quilt that Anitha brought into our lives through urban fabric. This is what we did. And I think surviving during the pandemic, uh, which we did very successfully. And this was, I feel, the something that I would always remember. What did you do during the pandemic hit us? We all went back to our own homes, but we got doubly busy, and we started living in each other's homes and invested in this project. This is what I'm going to remember for a long time.
Thank you, Suresh, for saying those very kind words. So this project also had more than 150 cultural practitioners in Bombay, in Bangalore. So would you like to say something about bringing all of them together to various kinds of projects, the process, how did the experience of leading various teams and various so many exhibitions with so many artists, would you like to share something about it?
I don't want to be self-congratulatory, but it was like herding a lot of sheep that were going in all directions. And some of them were not available. Some of them were there at home. I could catch them, but it taught me a lot of things. Having patience and listening to my fellow curators, and also trying to deal with a situation where you have to deal with a government, or you have to deal with an individual, or you have to deal with maybe somebody like a cameraman or an editor at this particular time. Everybody needed work, everybody needed inspiration. So here was a catalyst and a trigger for us to really put in a lot of effort to work on the Bangalore Connect project. I want to tell you the Bangalore Connect project is not limited in time. I feel it's going to expand, and I'm going to chase Bharathesh, Archana, and my two young friends, Ashok and Sandeep, to take it forward in many other ways.
Actually, most challenging with these artists were most of them were getting sick, and Some are true and some are not true. We don't know. But looking at the pandemic and all these, but it was very stressful, John. It wasn't so easy because we are used to being in the physical material as an artist and as a curator. We need to go see it and explaining and all these things. But fortunately, at least the Urban Fabric and Ashok's project, we could do it in that span of in between. We could catch that space, and then people rushed in because it was really like a breath for the city that something is happening, right? So, but communication, most of them didn't wanted to pick up phones also because they're tired, exhausted, you know. I still am pending with so many emails. They have not even emailed me back. I'm still pushing. We got tired. So as Suresh is saying, we lived in each other's house. That is why we could come and say, okay, work now. That's the energy we had.
But to echo what Archana is saying, you know, it was really interesting because our project, we sort of put it together and was able to exhibit in the nick of time. It was like this, it was a small time frame, you know, between the sort of first lockdown of 2020 and then the second wave hit. And we did our exhibition in end of March. And I think a week later, you know, cases started to rise. So we were really fortunate that we were able to do our project because ours was very sort of, you know, it was really important that we did the exhibition in a physical format, you know, so people could come and see it. And, you know, the unfortunate thing is I think Archana and Bharathesh feel the same way because they've had to put their projects online, but we're hoping that in the future sometime.
No, but after a week, we had planned, Umesh's film is actually an installation.
Yeah,
and
video installation.
Video. And he had already planned everything and everybody's was planned. Date was fixed, but then the lockdown again started. So now they are also little trying to push us, let's start. But I think after the third wave, we better do it.
I think has to be renamed Bangalore Connect between the pandemic.
Yes.
Between waves, you can call it that.
Between waves, or I noticed lockdown 3.0, 5.0. Now it seems 6.0 or something like that. So
Actually, you know, I wanted to point out something that was at the heart of a few years ago when Project 560 was reviewed. And that's when, like John explained, these three categories of support came and implementing projects came under it. The artistic and scholarly projects, then the curated engagements and the community projects. The idea behind the curated engagements was that, so IFA is supporting and implementing its own projects, that's fine. But can IFA support and implement and partner and collaborate with organizations, institutions in Bangalore that in their own mandate have already been working in an engaged manner with the city? And so that's why, I mean, even as funders, what has been very enlightening for us is to see how 6 lakhs is not a lot of money. It's not very less, but it's not very a lot also. But how one can become part of things which are already been happening. So I know that under One Shanti Road, and many of us have been there, you know, that Lal Bagh has been an obsession. This idea about the map has been there. That, you know, archives, small archives in people's homes has been an obsession. But all of them were already there. So sometimes what a grant can do is it can just nudge something and not necessarily create from scratch or, you know, reinvent the wheel, which sometimes as funders, we don't fully understand. So for myself, I could say on IFA's behalf, this has also been a learning. This and the Aravani project that we supported the year before, that even Aravani art project has been working in the city, just like One Shanti Road has been working in the city with multiple artists. So for us, it was important to see how can you take something which is already there, push it a little bit, and then it'll have its own life. It's not like if this funding ends, this project's end, like Suresh said.
No.
So that was very heartening to see how you become part of a much larger process of things.
Yes.
So
Actually, I'm very thankful to Suresh because he remembered this project and brought back to start off, because we've been talking and it is not like ending, and we don't know, I am saying to Suresh, we don't know it will end ever, because it continues. So I'm thankful to IFA that at this pandemic time, we had a goal.
Something to do.
Something
Keep
like
your sanity.
it really challenged us, and the artists and the students also very challenged because they wanted to do something. It was not they don't have a physical show, but at least there is an engagement in the
but
mind.
we also needed something to do now, otherwise we would have gone mad also. I mean, imagine trying to keep John motivated about his work if Bangalore Connect was not happening. So it's both ways, we need each other both ways. So
No, we have exhausted John a lot by showing an Excel sheet only once he got exhausted.
That was very good introduction to history of Bangalore, and I'm quite fascinated. How do you frame it in the context of pandemics as like a bracket from plague-amma to COVID-amma?
Yes.
No, John, it's actually started.
yeah, I'm just going to ask the audience if I can't see any questions here, just to poke them once more, saying if there is any question, we have another 10 minutes or so. So if you have questions, please do ask in the Q&A box. Yeah, sorry, Bharathesh.
No, it's okay. No, I just wanted to say that in the beginning, me and Archana and Suresh were thinking that we'll start from 1900. More we started digging into a history. We started ourselves in 1898. So most of the things started in Bangalore because of the COVID, the electricity, maybe the phone, maybe the
not COVID. We're so used to COVID now. Yeah. But till now, the plague which started there, the city still has a link. So we had to even think about what is quarantine, what is, then in COVID time, the whole quarantine time, that became the focus. The plague became the focus. And then you look into the city. So, and of course, a lot of historians have noted 1898 as an important
aspect. See, there's another aspect of the project, and if one of the curators could say a little more, and maybe this is Sandeep and Ashok, your thing, that getting other artists into the fray, and also maybe Anitha, your project, your Urban Fabric also had that. Amitabh's project had that. What was that? What were the challenges of that process? Because, there you were in some way acting like grant makers, right? I mean, you took on that role, or curators, whatever, however you want to call it. But you had to choose people. Some were open calls, but some. And was that hard? Was that difficult? Or is it part of the process at One Shanti Road for many other projects? So did you have a process in place?
Yeah, I think the one challenge that sort of comes to mind is that we were very, obviously, it's a Bangalore-based community project. The grant supports that, so we had to keep that in mind. And so we had to sort of look at artists, photographers who had done work specifically on or around Bangalore. And of course, there are many artists who do work about Bangalore, about the city and its conflicts. And but when we were looking at photos projects specifically, I think we kind of really had to dig deep and ask around. But that's sort of, that's what's sort of exciting about curation. And the one benefit that Shanti Road has is that so many artists and photographers have come through the space. So it's already like this, treasure chest of artists and practitioners to look at. But I think, that was a bit of a challenge because we were also very specific that we wanted to do something on the personal. We wanted it to be very intimate. So that in itself, again, sort of shrunk the pool of artists that we were looking at. But again, that was exciting. That was interesting. And then once we sort of and then we began to speak and talk to a lot of different artists, and that's always exciting because most artists, photographers are always interested in collaborating with Shanti Road, doing work with Shanti Road. So I think.
And I need to add that, as you said, that we were becoming grant makers in our own little way. I think the additional grant from Goethe, who are our cultural partners, was really a shot in the arm, and we were able to be a little more generous because Bharathesh and Archana were thinking that each one of these projects is like a 560 project by itself. So, it meant a little more money in the pockets of these very young students who were working with Archana and Bharathesh, and they were working in their homes, putting in a lot of effort to make these postcards, and also inviting the filmmakers in between the pandemic to shoot and create these films, which some of you can see on YouTube.
Well, also, Suresh, you did more of the work also. I mean, not just that you paid more, but even the work grew, because I remember initially it was not so many, exhibitions. Initially, it was not so many postcards. Even the work itself almost doubled in size as well from the first proposal that you had, right?
Yeah. So there was more opportunity to involve more people and engage with them, and also, kind of figure out different ways of incorporating their existing archive and their skills to be part of it. Because Archana, Bharathesh and me really think that we need to make it a physical exhibition. I'm looking forward to the physical exhibition because it's going to be a really interesting show that will focus on the city and through the perspective and the lens of artists.
Yeah. So here is Biju. Biju is in the audience, and so sweetly she said, I had a great time working peacefully on the Cubbon Park map. The park was mostly empty, and so was Shanti Road. Thank you for this awesome opportunity. Thanks, Biju. Thank you for being part of this project.
To add that it was very difficult to stop Biju because she was endlessly, doing this map. It was never ending and trying to put in details that would disappear. And I used to keep telling her that don't put that flower because it's seasonal. So, so people are going to look for a flower that is there in the map and won't find it. So,
but in India, before Google Map and all, that's how we used to give house direction. I remember, like turn right and a cow will be sitting there. So if the cow wasn't sitting there, it would be difficult to, yeah.
I have a question for Amitabh. So Amitabh, can you hear me?
Is he there?
Do you want me to answer?
Are you still there?
Yes, I am. I'm with my face
okay.
mask on, but I am here.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So what I wanted to ask is, you've been quite deeply involved in CTS studio in Delhi during Sarai Media Lab time. So after that, you shifted to Bangalore. So would you like to share your experience with Bangalore CTS studio?
That's an out of syllabus question, John.
That's my phrase, Amitabh.
Yeah.
That's my phrase, out of syllabus.
No, I think, I mean, just as one Shanti wrote and Suresh himself exemplifies, Bangalore is a wonderful city that hosts you. It orients you. And I had heard about Archana's project and the research that they had done from Suresh's mouth a while ago. And I've been, quietly trying to have an audience. It's been very challenging. John, this is a total like googly.
Hey, but Amitabh, I must add, even before Project 560 was in place, I remember the year that I had just taken over as executive director IFA. I met up with Jivesh in Delhi. And we just got talking about, for over many things. And I was meeting up with a lot of people to figure out what are their expectations of an organization. And so he was asking, what excites you? So I said, the city superbly excites me. And I'm quite excited about Sarai's city engagements. I knew about the little grants that they gave. I had looked it up a little bit. And I was saying, we have something in mind, but don't have the money to do it. So then he said, you're thinking of city, good, you should, there's nothing like that in Bangalore yet. And I said, no, there is. There are
Peking duck, Peking duck has happened.
There are little organizations that are doing a lot of work. There is no consolidated like that. So I would say a spark for the program Project 560 has been inspired by many things, but certainly Sarai City initiatives is one of the things that one has thought through.
No, but that's also now that I've been able to gather my thoughts. I think that's also one of the special things about Bangalore, because we have the culture of public art that I really benefited from, and we have a lot of practitioners here, my peers and my seniors, who have been working in public spaces and trying to unpack the complexity that they had. We had the best indie comics festival in Bangalore in 2018, and I'm so proud of it. It's just, it's a place where a lot can happen, a lot that is mobilized off the ground and can betray older forms of patronage and systemic thinking around arts and culture. I think,
Amitabh, you suddenly went mute. Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah.
No. Okay. Yeah. So basically that. Yeah. I think the nature of art and cultural practice that I've been exposed to in Bangalore is an adventure that's still unfurling. And yeah. But Jibesh never comes here, and I don't know why. Ask him.
Yes, he has too much to do in Delhi, I guess.
No. There's a deeper secret. One day, John, you should get Jibesh on a panel and throw a similar googly at him. He'll tell you.
Yeah. But this was really wonderful to hear from each of the artists. Actually, is Anitha there? I was wondering if Anitha could share a little bit about how she got so many different kinds of people involved, Anitha, in your urban fabric. I mean, there was just such a world of, so many worlds of things there. You looked at fabric from such different perspectives, So just a little bit, if the thinking behind that curation you can share.
Yeah, Suresh always used to say, you're out of orbit. I have to pull you into the core always. So he was responsible for bringing me into the thing. I've been working with the community from past 5 years. So also the city community, no one knows about them. Whenever they come to Bangalore, they think they're foreigners actually. And then when in their own areas, they are not being recognized as localites. They still see them as something dirty and so yeah, for me also bringing all of them together was a very important thing, because for me also fabric also it's a medium of expression for me. When my journey started some 5 years back, actually one of my friend got married to the community girl from city community, and then that's how I got introduced to the community. So it was quite fascinating to see the quilts in their houses, these memory quilts. They use all the material from their houses and then they make. So when I went some 5 years back, I started chasing a quilt to see okay, who is this lady who made this quilt, so that kind of and I'm also a person who likes to travel, so and also meet people. So yeah, I guess in this quest to also understand myself. So yeah, I was able to put in all these guys together and then do something about it. Yeah.
Thanks, Anitha. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just want to say a bit more about the Urban Fabric project. There were all these mini projects which were from the Urban Fabric project. Anita was one, and there was also Jeevan, who came up with this fascinating history of Bangalore's material culture. There were installations, performances by Suresh Kumar. There were artists from SG Vasudev, to somebody as Miss Shenoy, who was the youngest of the lot. And it also inaugurated a space in Chitrakala Parishad, which was actually my classroom and was becoming a public project space. And this was also a transition, not only in the in CKP's history, but also in my life, because I was revisiting it as a curator and was bringing in a lot of people who were associated with the college. And this show brought in a lot of artists from the community to revisit the Parishad, which was almost closed during the pandemic. That was most fascinating. And the workshop was a very, very good success. All credit goes to Anitha and the Siddhi sisters. They were just fantastic. We can't tell you how grateful we are to them, but it is a project that is continuing in many homes even today.
And
Yes, I
incidentally, I don't
agree.
sorry.
Sorry, it's okay.
I'm sorry, Anitha, you were saying something.
I just wanted to thank him for saying that. Like, yeah, you continue.
And incidentally, Arundhati has the quilt from the workshop behind her.
Yes, that is right behind her.
Yes, it's amazing. It was such a joy to partake of one piece. Each of them was so. I mean, it's hard to choose because you wanted all of them. You just didn't. It was very beautiful. Okay, I think there are no more questions here. I don't think there is anything from John. You want to do the honors then?
Sure. So thank you, Arundhati. Before I thank the artists and Goethe Institute, I would like to make an announcement. Next week, there's an exciting fundraiser that IFA is bringing to you. It is called Super Happy. And it has people like filmmaker Q, then Plastic Parvati is there, then National Animal and Rudur Roy. And it will be a mashup show with rap and roll, play acting, fun chats, and many surprises. So it's on the 7th of August, Saturday at 7:30 p.m. So please join us then also. And please bring your friends and family.
John, you forgot a very important part of this, no? The donor passes.
The donor passes are available in Insider Paytm. I think the chat will have it. Chat will have the link to Insider. So please join me in thanking the artists who made this evening very special, and Goethe Institute for jointly supporting the Bangalore Connect project, which gave space to more than 150 artists in Bangalore. I wish to thank the artists who spoke today: Archana Hande, Anitha N, Amitabh Kumar, Bharathesh GD, Ashok Vish and Sandeep TK, and especially Suresh Jayaram for holding it together very magnanimously. And I thank everyone for actively listening to us today evening. Please join us for the next IFA project showcase that will happen in August. Please watch out for the announcement on the IFA website and IFA social media. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.